Also here representing the Tradeswomen Task Force, and the contact information for the task force is included in the resource slides at the end of this program. And I'm very proud to be the policy co-chair at the task force, as well as a member and supporter of the National Task Force on Tradeswomen Issues. So the first part of this presentation is like, why is a 5-year plan important? So I think we can start with slide 2 now, if we've got everybody in the chat, I think, or most people have been in the chat. And so why do you need a plan? And one of the things that I have learned the hard way, and many other advocates and women who work with the tools have learned maybe also, is that longevity in the trades usually requires a plan. So this workshop is a chance for me to redo the decisions I made when I turned out. And as you all know, turnout in the trades is to finish your apprenticeship and get your journey level card. I finished my apprenticeship in the early 80s, and I was the 8th woman to turn out in the local. There's about 1,000 working members in my local. I felt that my career achievement was to keep employed, to go to work every day and survive all the incoming that I took on the job, and try to establish a reputation in the field that would allow me to keep working. I kept my head down at work and did not think beyond a career in the tools. I was active in my union because I believe in unions fiercely, but I wasn't really being strategic in my relationships there. I was on the political action committee and some other, I went and did phone banking, I did all that, but I wasn't thinking about how to establish a basis for a career in any one of those pathways that should have been in my mind. But then 10 years later, I started a family, and that was super challenging. Just the pregnancy with the issues of money and health insurance, making sure I had my hour bank high enough for the health insurance to carry through for the disability leave, and to have money to make sure that I had insurance for the birth. Even though I had saved money, it was still challenging. I had a lot of maternity leave nightmares, and I hadn't even started to worry about childcare. I joined a blended family with 2 older kids and a partner who worked rotating unscheduled shifts. And there was no extended family to help there either. But this isn't a poor me story, but many, if not most of you on the call, have faced similar struggles, but I have a different lesson. And that is the slide 3, please. That is from my second, the other side of this is that one of my sisters, trade sisters, who turned out a couple years after me, had taken a job at San Quentin prison as a maintenance electrician a few years earlier. And I thought she was absolutely nuts. I mean, why would you choose to work in San Quentin prison? I was working in the refineries on jobs of 3,000 trades guys was, enough. But so little did I really know, because a few years later, she started her family around the time I did. But by that time, she had taken her public agency job at San Quentin and transferred to the California Public Health Office complex in downtown Berkeley, a very cushy job, going out to lunch every day, low stress, public transportation if she wanted to use it. She had complete maternity leave with pay and healthcare benefits paid for all the way through and guaranteed for her maternity and disability, 6 months paid leave. Then she had a property right to return to her job. And she was able to come back at half time for another year after her first year. And then I realized I thought I was smart, and I was so dumb. On another part of the cautionary tale, a few years go by later, my son's around 4, and I'm getting really painful arthritis in my knees. I look ahead and I know that I don't have 20 more years of journey level physical labor left in my body. I was older when I had my first child. I have 20 years that I will need to financially raise all my kids of work ahead of me, and these knees aren't going to last. Then I look around at my apprenticeship class, the guys who graduated with me and are now 20 years out. What are they doing? Well, most of them have actually thought about retention. They have set themselves up on a retention path. They have taken the right steps to have specialty certifications that allow them to do work which is less taxing if they're going to continue to work with the tools, or they've taken the right steps to become apprenticeship instructors, business agents, or organizers, or they've set themselves up with a particular contractor to run work. Even um, some of the folks in our local are like professional general foremen on big refinery jobs, or they've gone into other public agency jobs with the county on maintenance, utilities. And I had been paying attention. I'm well respected in my union at this time, and they were sending me all over the state and country to represent the local, but I had no pathway to a paid position inside the union. Those positions were still being reserved for friends and male friends and families. Um, so I knew I wanted to do political work for the building trades, and luckily I had what I had been heretofore useless college degree from long ago. So I took the steps to apply and go to law school. I got financial aid, and so it wasn't the hit that it would have been without it. And my local proudly sent me off to college. I'm still proud to do the work on behalf of the building trades, and I am able to work on diversity and women's economic futures and union uh, union careers. But law school's not for everyone. It was kind of a drastic step. But the lesson about longevity in the trades requires a plan. So you really need to start early. And that doesn't mean you have to achieve it early, but you have to have your sight on where you want to go, or set a groundwork so you have some choices. So that's what this workshop's about. So the next part of this, and I'm going to be guided by Eve as to whether we should do breakouts or a single conversation. We're right at the...
I think we could probably all stay together for this.
Okay. So, and this can apply to all of us, except those of us who think they're going to retire in the next 3 years. I don't know, but everybody else, just what are your career goals? And this is aimed particularly for women who are still working with the tools. How rough is your trade? How strong is your body? And look around you. What's the average age of your fellow workers in the field? These are questions you should ask yourself. So, I mean, if everybody around you is under 40, you kind of have a clue as to what the longevity in your area and for your trade is. But if you have lots of fellow workers who are 55 and 60, then clearly there's much more longevity available for whatever reasons in your trade and in your area. I also think it's important to be frank about your current and expected family obligations. It's certainly, as a rule, a lot easier to have like a public agency job if you're a primary caregiver, because you tend to have more set hours and steady work, less overtime. And we can talk later about what the financial differential would be. And then answer this question as well. In 10 or 20 years, I want to be fill in the blank. So maybe people can put their answers in the chat or thoughts, and we can call and discuss based upon that. Is that okay? Or if not, I can also just call on people if I have an idea of who's here. Yes, I can. Can I post the questions for discussion? Yeah.
I don't know if this is affecting anybody else, but I wonder if we could turn off the recording for the participation parts and then turn it back on for you talking.
Um, but we'll turn off the recording at any moment because the real conversation is important here. And
For
all
sure.
of us know that we have issues. And Owen, if you want it off during your presentation, I'm okay with that too. So this is a sort of a snapshot of some major pathways and careers that journeyman women could take. And some of them you could come from outside the trades, but most of them, your construction on hands-on experience is going to help you and be critical. Some of them may require, none of these here would clearly require a 4-year degree, but some of them a 2-year degree would be useful. And many of us have gotten pretty close to a 2-year community college degree just through our apprenticeship nowadays. So the buttons in blue are union or union related, like, and it depends. Foreman in some areas and in some trades is really business and employer related. In other areas, it's you can rise up more. It's more a union position. Business agent, union organizer, the instructors and coordinators positions at the JATC. Again, in theory, that's a joint management and labor position, but oftentimes the unions are stronger in terms of who gets that position. Your union record is a prerequisite for the utilities and public agency trades jobs that we've talked about, or private maintenance or stationary engineer positions. There's another, that Janelle mentioned, and others that can be important. And as I put in the chat, for those kinds of jobs, if you're making 75% of scale, you're probably your take home is probably equal. And I'll tell you a couple of reasons, unless you work a lot of overtime. And if you only want to work overtime, those aren't the jobs for you anyway. But you get paid sick, you get paid holidays, you get paid vacation, you get a set schedule, you don't have to run all over tarnation. Chances are your transportation to and from the job is a lot cheaper because you're not showing up here, there, and everywhere. And particularly if you need a set schedule. And you have HR in those positions as a rule. Not always. So those kinds of jobs can be very, very appealing to some people. Earlier in my career, I didn't want to see the same people every day. That was one of the things I really liked about the trades, is like, you'd work with the same people for 3 weeks or 3 months, but then, they would leave the job, you would leave the job. You didn't have to like anybody too much. I always liked that part. Political or community rep. A lot of union organizations are now adding a lot of legislative or community representative positions, and whether or not it's tracking or not, women are often put in the community rep positions, and it can be it can be something that's fulfilling. In the brown boxes, we have much more contractor related positions. You can work inside as an estimator or purchasing agent or safety director. That's on the job site usually for the safety director, but it's sort of a combo position. But a lot of journeymen have gone into estimating. You can work in the contractor management side of things, or become a business owner. That takes capital. It is not cheap to be a business owner, and you have to figure that part of it out because you're running a business, and all the business stuff is, coming up there, as well as you in the trades. Having capital is critical. And if you're going to be in a subcontracting position, you're going to get squeezed for your money. So you really have to have a strong capital position because the generals run on your money. Just saying. I think that's okay to say, even though it's being recorded, right? And then, and then it's a contractor association. Contractor associations have, some of them are large and have a lot of staff, and they all have management positions. So you like your NECA, your SMACNA, your AGC. I'm not going to mention the ABC because I won't, but these associations are also have positions that have taken people out from the tools. Usually, if you're going to move into contractor association manager, you probably have had some success inside the union to make that shift. But it can be a pathway when, you know, when your move up in the union is blocked, you can sometimes go in that position, and it could be a fit. The green blocks are more about some more alternative jobs that you may or may not have considered. Like most of the women who are running tradeswomen's organizations around the country, not all, have come from working with the tools. In part, I think the passion comes there. But some, it isn't. There are a few really great leaders in this field who don't come out of the trades. Pre-apprenticeship instructors, there are more and more pre-apprenticeship programs, both women only and co-ed programs. And certainly in California, we're trying to encourage women to go into pre-apprenticeship instructor if they so want to, and to get all of our co-ed pre-apprenticeship programs to hire women, because we think it's one picture. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, a real life person's worth 1,000,000. A compliance officer, there are compliance organizations for the union and the contractors, and those gigs actually pay something, and can be something, a place for somebody coming out of the tools. Oftentimes,
They're in the car. Look what I found.
Hi there. And then public agencies also have compliance officers. They have, the city of San Francisco has a very robust construction oversight compliance program. Susie Suafai, who'll talk later, has also done oversight and compliance. Oftentimes those jobs are not as steady as some of the other agency positions. And they don't necessarily pay as well. So, and not, if you're working in a nonprofit, you definitely, you know, let me look at Esther there. You're definitely not getting good since Esther works for Tradeswomen Inc. It's a challenge to make a good living working for a nonprofit. So you need to be like frank with yourself about that. There's the whole side hustle, which you can, a lot of the guys that I work with, and this is harder now that housing is so expensive, but they would buy fixer uppers and they'd flip them. They, you know, it would be something that they would work on, and that when they were laid off, they just go work on their rentals, or they work on the houses or that they had bought. You know, other people actually just went into real estate, where they were buying and selling real estate, got a real estate license, and combine that. These are the kinds of things that you could go in and out of working with the tools, but it would give you more longevity and another economic basis on which to on which to have, you know, like if we go through a recession again, remember the people working for public agencies and utilities are probably not losing their jobs. They're probably not missing a paycheck, which is another thing that sometimes people would talk about. Oh, I'm going to miss all the overtime, are not actually thinking clearly about. These are not easy jobs to get, and we'll talk about that some more. And now that I would like now to because we'll revisit this slide later, but I want to spotlight a couple of these pathways. And the first person I'd like to introduce is Owen Brown, who is a pre-apprenticeship instructor, a California carpenter, and she's going to share some of her story and her career pathway. Her a short bio is posted here on the as part of the presentation, but take it away, Owen.
Hi, everybody. How you guys doing? Yay! Oh, no. Okay. Well, I was born in New Orleans. I used to live in New York, and I was raised in Oakland. So my personality is a little bit all over the place sometimes. But I attended a pre-apprenticeship program in Oakland, California. It lasted a year. I started the second semester. From there, I joined the union. They gave us some cheap tools, some even cheaper boots. I got my first job doing bridge work, and I loved it. It was tough work, but no matter what, I came from a strong family where, you know, you say something smart to me, I say something smart to you, then we hug and love. So it was dysfunction and love. So when I went out in the field, I fit right in. So they couldn't run me off the job because, as you guys all know, it is dysfunctionality out there in the field. We know that, and you need to have more than tough skin to be able to deal with that. That's a mental trip we have to deal with sometimes. But at any rate, I remained in the field for quite a while. And then when 2006, I put down my bags and I became a pre-apprenticeship instructor at City Build Academy in San Francisco. And it was really, really different going from working outdoors all the time and dealing with the gruff and having a 30-minute lunch and sometimes a 10-minute break and having to scarf down your food and rush and only be in a certain area to being able to teach and slow down and to give back. It was really pleasurable, but it was also challenging. From there, that job I would like to also add was part of the UBC. So I did get my union wage. I received all of my benefits, my pension, and my annuity as well. After that, I went back in the field for a little while. Then I wanted to teach again. So I attended San Francisco State University and San Francisco City College because they had a joint program to earn your teaching credentials. However, near the end, when I was almost finished, San Francisco State lost their accreditation. So I only got my preliminary and my clear from there. So for a while, you know, I was just out in limbo. And then networking. I volunteered for Tradeswomen Inc. for a long time, as well as Rebuilding Together in other agencies. And Meg sent me to Laney College one day. And a friend of mine was actually running that program when I worked at him at City College. But at any rate, I met this lady there and she told me about that was her job. Her job was to align you up with going to the right school to fit your needs. And I was like, "What is that what you do? Thank you." It only cost $75. So she found the University of San Diego, San Francisco State, transferred my credits. They accepted most of them. And now I have my teaching credentials. But at any rate, having that and not having it does not stop you from teaching, if that's something that you want to do. Because since teaching at City Build, I've taught at Future Build in Pittsburgh, at Rising Sun in Berkeley, at YEP. And if it's not working out for me, I leave. Just like in a relationship I have with
I can't believe I forgot that part.
yeah, if it's not working out, I'm gonna leave. I'm gone. You know, it took me 20-some years to drag up on a job. I've never did that before. I just put up with it. Like I said, I talk smack, you talk smack, give me my check on Friday. It's all good, you know. And but one job I had at Calaveras at the dam, and I dragged it the wrong way because I had forgot my tools there, you know, and I had to go back and get my tools, but still I felt good about it because it was not a good fit for me. And now I'm at Job Corps in San Francisco with a beautiful view every morning. I cross the Bay Bridge, beautiful San Francisco skyline. I'm on the water. I see the Golden Gate Bridge. There's Alcatraz on the other side of San Rafael Bridge. And it's very different there because the students live in a dorm and they're from the ages of 16 and 24. Around the country, we have 73 centers. And if you have family members or other people, you know, please spread the word because it's not just about carpentry. They have other trades there as well. And I think it's a great program for young people, especially if they're between a rock and a hard place and they don't have anywhere to go. Because again, they do provide housing. They help them reach their academic goals as far as getting their high school diploma or GED. If you do well in the program at the one in San Francisco, after you complete your 2 years, the third year, if you want to go to San Francisco City College, they will pay for you to attend there. And then some of those students transfer on to Stanford or UC Berkeley. So we also, Meg mentioned, and she's provided the slide of other opportunities we have outside of teaching. I know Miss Liz mentioned being a business agent. A good friend of mine, she works for the SFPUC. She does compliance. Another friend of mine, she's a retired iron worker. She's the executive director of the West Oakland Job Resource Center. Another friend of mine, Diana, she does quality control. So she went to school, she got her safety certifications. She does that. Another friend of mine, Tanya, she does safety for Cahill Construction in the Bay Area. So there are a lot of opportunities for us. We just don't happen to hear about them, and we don't talk about them enough. We just don't. We don't mention them. All we talk about is wearing our bags. And at the most part, you may hear about municipalities. Out here, that would be PG&E, which is the electric company, and East Bay Mud, which is the water company. You hear about those a lot. But don't forget about the Department of Apprenticeship Standards. They need people like us as well, you know, so just network as much as you can. And again, I volunteer by choice, and I choose the places I volunteer because they give me something back in return. It feels good. That's why I volunteered for Rebuilding Together so long. Also, I volunteer for the Shoe Project, which I heard about again from Tradeswomen Inc. And I've been doing that for about 7 years. Once a year, we create a project, whether it's bookends or a vanity that the kids make. They meet women like us and other women, and they rent 2 buses. They take the girls to a shoe store, allow them to buy 2 pair of shoes. They have extra money left over. They can buy like a scarf or a hat. And we're mentors for those young girls. So they get the shoes, they get to make an object, and they get to do an art project. And so that's my biggest takeaway from here, is to give back where you can. I know we're tired, we're beat up, but find something that makes you happy. Recently with the Carpenters, we teamed up with the Girl Scouts in Sacramento. And to my trade sister that's in the Carpenters Union, you know, every time we do something, we got to build a toolbox. And it's like, I'm tired of the toolbox. I'm so tired of the tool. Let's do something else. So we set up extra tables. So one was a toolbox table, and then the other one was a design with it was a wooden triangle we cut out and put some stickers on it and made a face. And we made an eyeglass holder, and it was like one of the most popular tables, and it was mine. Thank you. And we had a lot of fun. But you know, just be creative, because we don't all want a toolbox. You know, but we had a great time. But those are some of the things I do. Also giving back to Girls Inc., you know, because we're all women. We were once little girls. And instead of waiting for this organization to exist, let's do it in a small part until we continue to grow and grow and grow. And we all become that force, you know. Thank you for listening. Thank you for having me.
So we have some time for any questions directly for Olwyn right now. And thank you, Olwyn, and thank you for all that you do for our organization, as well as all the women in the Bay Area of California. Raise your hands or put your questions in the chat, or there'll be more time for questions later. You don't, but.
May I also add before we go, I don't know if they have this other places, but Rebuilding Together, I believe they started it about 5 years ago, and it's called She Build.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and we have a great time. So it's an all women's crew. So plumbers, electricians, carpenters, bricklayers, we all come out and we do the project for 3 weeks, because the first 2 weeks are prep weeks, and the third week is the final big weekend. And let me tell you, it is just so much fun. It is so relaxing, and it's good to be around us. We tell our own jokes, whether we got cramps or whatever it is, or my hair falling out, my hair growing, my fake hair, my real hair, whatever it is. We get together and we talk about women's issues without men being there, and we have a great time. And it's also a lot of unskilled workers there, and the women's reaction to us. I mean, you would think that, you know, we were Kamala Harris or somebody, the way they treat us when we pick up a screw gun. You can do that? And it's like, yeah, let me show you. You teach them how to nail. So it is a lot of fun. And I'm not sure if they do that throughout the United States, because again, you know, it's just in 5 years, but it is so much fun. So please look into it if you have the opportunity.
That's exactly right. And actually, I think that's how we started it here. Is sister said, okay, we want to have all women's crews and all women's days, and they said, well, show me, and that's how it happened. Don, you can jump in if there's something you want to add at this point. We don't mean to silence your voice at any time.
Oh, no. Okay, well, if I could I guess go back to
Sure.
my 5-year plan. I'm definitely interested. I'm a carpenter in New York City. I just turned journeywoman 2 years ago. So yeah, and my goals are just I'm hoping to become at least a shop steward, to stay working, possibly a foreman. And looking at, I guess, the chart that we were just looking at, the rentals. Like my vision of even before, joining the union, I always wanted to do property management. And I bought my first house last year, so I'm hoping to buy many more and to continue and to go with this whole whole thing. And I'm gonna just stick with it.
I want to urge everyone to think about asset building. Part of what the trades offer for men and women, but particularly women, is a chance to put some money together and create some capital for themselves and their family. And that's, significantly missing in so many of the communities that we all live in. And I don't want to go into the numbers or anything, but this is an opportunity. Please take advantage of it. There's nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, I'm happy to have all of you join the nonprofit advocacy pathway, but I'm just as pleased to have all of you join the, I'm going to own the world pathway, because we need both. We need women who to amass capital, make sure they get their pensions. That's what we're about. We're not about just creating more ways to starve or be underpaid and underrepresented. Just speaking for myself. So next I'd like to introduce Susie Suafai. So we're on slide 7 here. And Susie is another esteemed colleague, and she's going to talk about another set of career options. And Susie doesn't come from the tools, but has built her own non-traditional career as a nonprofit tradeswoman advocate, apprenticeship consultant, and compliance officer. She can tell you more about all the jobs that she's had. And these are all positions that Task Force Tradeswomen have asked about in very recently and over time. And I also, Tradeswomen Inc. gets asked to refer tradeswomen who might be interested in these positions by people in the field. And so I really encourage you to think about them if they're of interest to you, because I imagine in your communities, there is probably also a demand that may be building. But the nonprofit sector, as a rule, doesn't pay well. And that is just a fact. And on the other hand, I mean, as we said, that public agency positions, some of whom will hire compliance officers and related advocacy positions, still offer that same paid sick, vacation, paid holidays, and year-round employment. And again, I put in the chat that I think if you're making 75% of scale in a public agency job with those kinds of benefits, you're making as much money, and oftentimes more, that you're making way more than you'll make when in the downturn economy, but you're making an equivalent if you're to a full-time position in a regular economy. So they're worth considering. And without more ado, I'll introduce, and Susie was running women in apprenticeship and referred me to my to the IBEW apprenticeship applications in 1978. So she is responsible for my career in the trades. Yes, she is. So here's Susie.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Thank you. I know a lot of you, so good to see you all after two years of being in quarantine. Anyway, I want to make it really short. I am not a tool. I'm not a tradeswoman. I am an advocate, and I started off as an advocate in 1974, preparing women to take those damn apprenticeship exams. I was a tutor. So I tutored mathematics, spatial relations, mechanical reasoning, all that stuff, English comprehension to get the women to pass. And I got to know women at that level, you know, why they wanted to join the trades in 1974. I never understood it, but as I got to know these women, I got to understand that they'd been waiting most of their lives for this opportunity to apply to a trade, for God's sake. So in 1974, when Women in Apprenticeship started as a demonstration of the US Department of Labor, women came to our doors by the flood to apply to these apprenticeship programs. What we found out early on is that we needed to know the laws that governed entry into apprenticeship. We needed to know what the equal opportunity in apprenticeship, 29 CFR Part 30 was, CFR Part 30 was, we needed to know what the state laws were, the federal laws were, how the city impacted. We needed to know all the laws that impacted a woman's entry into apprenticeship. And so part of our job was to learn those laws before we even went to an apprenticeship JATC to say, hey, we're here and we want you to take women applicants. Hello. We needed to know their job better than they knew their job. And so we were really forced to know these laws. And to this day, I know those laws like the back of my hand because I had to. And so as the laws change, I keep up with the changes in the laws, but that was my apprenticeship. That's how I served a 4-year apprenticeship, is knowing those damn laws, learning each trade, knowing their application process, knowing their testing, knowing how they operated. As an advocate and as somebody who is part of a tradeswomen organization, in order to be effective, you need to know their job better than they know their job. And so, as Liz will tell you, she said she's tired. I'm tired with you, sister. You have to keep up with that stuff, because when the boys change the rules, you have to know how they change the rules on you and how to make the difference to get women in. So that's how I started, and it has evolved from that. I was able to work for a contractor as their affirmative action consultant. I mean, part of a career path is to be a consultant. Take everything you've learned about how to get women into the trades and offer that as a service to a contractor who's working under a project labor agreement, who's working on a federal contract. They're always looking, as Meg said, they're looking for people to do compliance. The laws that impact federal hiring, local hiring, all of that is compliance driven. And people who are involved with projects as compliance officers are hired for the affirmative action part of it, not for the build out, not for contract compliance, but for the affirmative action part of the compliance. And if you know what the requirements are on that job for hiring, whether it's a federal job, a state job, a city job, that is what you are involved with when you do the affirmative action compliance. And basically, you're making sure that the contractor is doing their good faith effort to comply with the hiring requirements. And if, I always say, if you're doing your good faith effort, then you're going to meet it. You're going to meet whatever that compliance, that hiring requirement is on that job. So, I mean, that's what contract compliance is in its very basic form. But in order to really be effective, you've got to know what their required to do under each contract, whether it's a federal contract with a 6.9% goal for hiring women and all the good faith effort steps that come with it, or whether it is a project labor agreement that requires apprentice hires, in some areas, minority hiring, women hiring. You gotta know what those contracts say about hiring, and then you've got to be able to go into your toolkit and say, okay, here I am, let's see how we can make this happen. And then the other part of it is you've got to be willing to be the bad guy and pull the plug when they're not complying. You know, if they're effing up and they're not complying and they're not doing what you suggest that they do or what they're required to do under the contract, then you've got to be willing to pull their contract, or you've got to be willing to make sure that they pay monetary consequences for not complying. If you're not willing to do that, and if you're not willing to take on, you know, if you're working for the city, if you're working for the feds, if you're working for the contractor, if you're not willing to pull that plug, then you shouldn't do contract compliance, because that's the only power you have, is to be able to withhold people's money when they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I actually love contract compliance work. I love being the bad guy, and I love, you know, so that's not unusual for me. I'm big, I can be bad. and I love withholding their money, damn it. I
Tell us
really
a story. Did you ever have to do, obviously you did. Can you tell us a quick story?
We had a contractor on a PLA and I here in the Port of Oakland, and we gave them all the good faith effort and stuff, and we pulled the plug on them, and I had to buck the building trades in order to withhold the money. Now, it's not fun to buck the building trades because it was a union contractor, but you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, whether you're union or non-union on a PLA. And if you're not living up to the agreement, you're not living up to it. So you've got to be willing to take that on and fight for the withhold. So, but anyway, I'm more than happy to answer your questions about contract compliance. Those of you who have been in the field for a long time, you know a lot of the laws that apply. If you're interested in being a consultant, you can hang your shingle up. People are always looking for people from the field. I worked for a contractor. I worked with engineers who didn't know their ass from a hole in the ground, but were engineers on construction sites. They hadn't worked a tool in their life, but they were engineers. You have a better chance of being an engineer on a construction site coming from the tools, because you know what you're doing, versus the engineer that comes out of college. So you could consider investing the 2 years to go to college to get an engineering degree. You would be much better than those who just go to school. Anyway, just a suggestion. That's all. I'd be more than happy to answer questions.
So questions here, you know, just in full disclosure, I've also done compliance, and the only person who taught me how to do it was Susie. So that, and but it takes a lot of
Meg, there's a question in the chat about how much to charge for it.
Go do a what do they call that? Take a look at what consultants
salary
charge.
survey, yeah,
salary survey, and then charge on the high end. I mean, depending on who, if it's a big contractor like Turner or a smaller local contractor like BBI, your prices will differ, but they're hiring your expertise. And once you work with them, it's like I got hired by BBI to do their prevailing wage. I worked with their accounting staff to teach them how to do prevailing wage contract compliance. Once they learn it, and then you're out of a job. So you just, whatever the market can take, that's what you charge.
And it would vary regionally. I mean, currently, depending upon what you've got, you'd be at $150 an hour probably. But remember, no, you don't think so?
No. Try more like 200, 250, 300.
I've been out of the market for a while since I've
Because
had,
remember, they don't know what you know.
oh, that's
They're
true.
hiring your expertise, or they would have to, pay somebody to go to school to learn it. And you're coming directly out of the field and they don't know what you know. You know a lot more than they do. And that's why they're paying you.
And then the other thing about as a business model, remember that you're carrying a lot of, you're not multiplying that hourly wage times 2,000 hours a year and with no expenses. You're covering all your expenses, and you're only working periodically, because you can't charge for every hour that you work for a contractor in this job anyway. There's going to be unchargeable hours, so you got to cover that in your wage position. And Susie's right, I do think there's going to be a growth in the call for compliance at different levels in the industry at this point. If we actually get the government agencies to up their compliance in the construction industry, we're seeing hopeful signs, but we don't know yet. But 29 CFR 30 and Executive Order 11246 are the federal Bibles, and then you have some state places to go as well. I just want to mention, Susie noted that there are other places where a degree, we on our major chart, we didn't put in the kinds of jobs that would require a 4-year degree, but the architect or engineer, construction management, accountant, legal, a lawyer, pretty much you have to think that you need a 4-year degree. As Owen mentioned, a teaching credential or some kind of teaching certificate, and that could be sometimes there could be a 2-year certificate level in the field that you want, a safety certificate or something. It's not all necessarily a 4-year degree, but those can be really helpful. But you should look around. And in the long run, anytime anybody offers you, when you're working with the tools or whatever, the opportunity to get a piece of paper as a certificate, you take it. Even if it seems bizarre at this point, maybe you don't intend to do hazmat work, maybe you don't intend to do, you think, well, instrumentation be nice, but I don't know. Take every single kind of specialty certificate. And I see Terry nodding her head here, specialty welding, any kind of specialty thing that you can have. You never know when that's the skill that somebody's going to need for a job and nobody else has got it that's on the books, or when you're applying for a different kind of job, not out of the hall, that you're going to have what you're going to show your skill level with the kind of pieces of paper that people value, whether or not they always represent the kind of value that people put on it. It doesn't matter. Having those pieces of paper in your pocket are important. Don't pass them up. Any other questions for Susie, or thoughts or anecdotes from her past that we want to elicit?
Liz wants to know how you do a salary survey. If you can, I don't know, if you know some consultants, just call them up, Liz, and ask them how much they charge, and then just take an average of what they charge and start there. You have a lot of background in, that you can turn into a great consulting gig, let me tell you.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And you got a couple networking opportunities too. That's another thing in any of these pathways. you know, and Liz, you said it to me a long time ago, and it sticks with me that for a tradeswoman to survive, she needs really strong skills. And that's partly the certificates and all that, whatever job opportunities you have to learn new skills, take them, and you need a network. And that network can be this one, but it should also be a bigger one. And you know, I always said you can have an enemies list, because we all are going to deal with people that we just can't forgive for how crappy they've been, and we are not necessarily in a position of power where we could actually expose them without ruining our careers. It's all right to have a few names on your enemies list, but it can't be everybody that you deserves to be there. You have to keep it really, really short. Just 2 or 3 people. In, you know, over your time. I mean, I don't know if you understand that reference, but I don't want to tell people you have to forgive and forget everybody. But there's you know, keep a short list, bide your time, and chances are you'll get the opportunity to feel vindicated in one way or another. But it has
Yeah.
to be a really short list.
There's also an association of contract compliance officers, and I don't know, they used to meet yearly before COVID, but there is an association of a national association of contract compliance officer. And yeah, I charge $300 an hour, Liz,
Way to
for
go.
prevailing wage. Prevailing wage is a pain in the ass, okay?
No, that's
You
fair.
rock, Susie.
Actually, I have a degree from the National Association for Contract Compliance Officers, because following my own advice when I worked for the Port of Oakland, I was a contract compliance officer, is one of my pathways on PLA compliance. And they offer classes in their annual conference, and you can get a certificate. So and it's a good way to make networking. But that contract compliance is almost entirely small business and minority DBE programs. And I had to always, in my meetings in the Bay Area, stress the fact that prevailing wage and local hire, and there are all these other aspects of contract compliance that people should become familiar with. And I tried to train people in how to do that work, and encourage public agencies to do it. As I say, I do think that that tide is turning, where people will be doing that work more and more based upon the public cry for enforcement.
Yeah, and I just want to say one more thing. You know, you're worth what you charge. If you charge less, you know, if you come cheap, they're gonna not look at you really well. But if you charge higher, you know, they're going to consider that you come with a lot of, you know, good stuff behind you. And each of you know more than you think you know about the area that you're interested in. I mean, I heard Janelle talk earlier today on another Women's Bureau thing, and she'd make a great consultant. I mean, because she's got really good background. So, you know, I mean, seriously, just and Olwyn went to Rising Sun and revamped their whole instructor thing. You know, so you could go into any nonprofit and teach them how to set up their training area to make it more effective and efficient. So really look at what your skills are and what you can bring to an organization, to, you know, the building trades, to an employer. You know more than you are, and you should charge what you know you're worth. Do not be afraid.
There you go.
Yeah, so you kind of just touched on it. I was going to ask about like the DBE compliance officers, because while y'all were talking about compliance, I was thinking about that we brought our students to a field trip when the airport here was under construction, so that they could see like a construction site, and they had a bunch of people from the administration side like bring them in the job trailer, and they showed them a little presentation. And there were some ladies that were there that were compliance officers, and they talked about the DBE participation, this federal job, prevailing wage, and I guess other things too. So yeah, I was just gonna ask if y'all had dealt with that, but You said, yeah.
Absolutely. There's a whole market for
That's a
people.
big market.
Yeah, that's the big market. There are people who specialize in outreach to DBEs, WBEs, disadvantaged, economically disadvantaged businesses just for federal, for federal projects and for state and local projects that require DBE, WBE, and disadvantaged contractors. I know women who come from the contracting industry who set up their own little shop just to do, just to work for big contractors, to do the outreach for WDBE and economically disadvantaged contractors when they're working on, to bid on big projects. And these women, and Meg knows them, they've built their own consulting business just for that purpose. And they're the ones that go out and they work with the contractor to do the outreach to the DBE community, WBE community, economically disadvantaged. They're the ones that meet with all the small businesses to tell them about the projects and to get them ready to bid on projects. So yeah, there is definitely a market out there, and there are women who have set up businesses just for that purpose.
Yep. And if you want to go into that line of work, some of these, like some of these people are bidding all over the country, let us know.
We can hook you up.
We can hook you up.
I just want to mention quickly what you're saying about Susie, charge what you're worth. My mom did fundraising at the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston, and when she retired, she did a bunch of volunteer work, but then she had a few consulting gigs, and then the sad part is she got ovarian cancer, but she was charged, like kind of how she dealt with it. She was charging people $300 an hour to meet with her in the hospital while she was getting her chemo.
Yeah.
And she was worth every penny.
And then some, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I want to go back to our chart. We're sort of like moving towards, we have a few more minutes that we can stay on this call, but we've covered a whole lot of different kinds of areas. There's so much more to talk about if you are interested in any, ways of thinking about the moves you should be making in any one of these pathways. I think we've covered a sort of a breadth of ideas, and that was the most important part of this workshop, is to open up the world to different kinds of ideas about things you could be thinking about, pathways, decisions that you make now, if you go and get yourself some kind of certification that allows you to take a different kind of job, or you volunteer for your union for a position that nobody wants. Sometimes I forget what they call it, different things, like, your the folks who test organized guys who come and gals who come in, or there's all sorts of like obscure union volunteer positions that can put you on a track maybe for a business agent or something that you hadn't really thought of. Run for your e-board, even though that's not what you want, but if you want to be a business agent, you better run for your e-board. These kinds of things. There's a whole lot of specific kinds of ways of thinking, or to take an estimating class. Oftentimes your training trust will offer foreman or estimating classes, and at this point you don't think you have the opportunity to do that. But when work expands, oftentimes women who are like shut out of a lot of opportunities in certain areas, all of a sudden they're only going to promote local members to be foremen on their jobs. On that second note, the Tradeswomen Task Force Google Groups is just a great resource. Put out a question, put out a request for who has done this kind of work, who's willing to talk to me about it. I am astounded and proud of the generosity of the members of that of our internet Google group to respond and help people when they ask for it. I mean, if it's possible, people will respond. So put it out there. You know, if you, particularly like if you hone down on something, there's somebody who's going to be able to help you get further down the road, whether or not, you know, and the idea is you're getting further down the road. And Janelle, as you are doing for others, you get further down the road, you lift your hand back and bring your other tradeswomen with you. Yeah. Well, I'm fairly certain we're pretty close to the end of everybody's last nerve on Zoom, or at least ready to go. And I would like to have people think about any further. I'm not going to volunteer unlimited webinars in the future, but I do think there's more that we could do for the tradeswomen community as a whole to support them in other kinds of to push people into positions of leadership or just more satisfaction and greater retention with their work that they started when they worked with the tools. So let us know, you know, respond to me, respond to Connie at the Tradeswomen group. Just share your thoughts as you go forward here. So, and with that, I think we're on our last. You have my email, you have the task force email, and I want to thank Eve Mefford from the IWPR, the International Women's Policy. I'm going to garble that. Okay, Ariane, you know. The Institute for Women's Policy Research and her generous and IWPR's general support, tech support for this workshop, which made it possible for me to consider doing it. Thank you, Eve.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and Ariane, who also works for IWPR, and I think technically maybe Eve's boss, but I don't want to like go too far there.
She is indeed.
Meg, thank you so much for your generosity with your time and your lifetime of experience, and for bringing the wonderful panelists to share with us, and for keeping Tradeswomen Inc. just with your eyes on the prize. So thank you for everything you do.
That's sweet, Connie. And thank you, and Olwyn and Susie, thanks for pulling my fat out of the fire, so to speak.
Thanks for having us.
And for being some of the icons that lead me forward, both of you. Both of you, the generosity that you both have shared in the community as well as with me, and helps me to keep going. Thank you.
Love you, Meg, and her husband Tom makes the best gumbo. Yeah.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. All right. Good night now, everyone.